Hi, and welcome to City Girls of Country Roots. As you can tell, we have now started to plant our tomatoes, or more like bushes out here in the backyard. And what we're doing is we're burning holes into the black weed fabric, planting the tomatoes inside of it. We're also taking and using some of our own homemade fertilizer for this adventure. Usually in my fertilizers, I like to keep them organic as possible. And what I'm showing you too is that we transplanted these last night. And right now, of course, we're in like the dead heat of the day. It's a little bit probably afternoon. And you will notice that some of them look like they're kind of wimpy. Well, the thing is, with your transplanting your vegetables, they go through a little bit sometimes of shock, but also when it's hot throughout the day like this, they will take and also kind of wither. It's not the fact that, oh, they're dead. They just kind of go through a withering process. But back to my fertilizer, I like to make up my own fertilizer. And one of the good things that you can do, or just use if you don't have certain things or certain resources, you can just get a little bit of Epsom salt. Make sure, especially with tomatoes, that you probably incorporate a little bit of lime, whether it's Dolomite lime or just some regular lime, and put that in there. And what it does is because that's going to also give calcium. And I like to put also in a little bit of blood meal and bone meal, one for the nitrogen, which will, of course, give you the green leaves. And the other part will also give you the point to where it will set up good roots and everything. So I like to mix that in there too. And probably a little bit, if you can find something like a little bit of rock dust or something, then I would say add that. But if you can't, the most common things that you can always find would be the bone meal, the blood meal, Epsom salt. You can get it from any store, Kroger's, Walmart, hardware store. And the same thing even with the lime. You can take and get that too, usually from like your Lowe's and some of your big box stores. And you just want to make sure that you put enough in there. Don't overdo it, because lime too can change the pH of your soil. So you don't want to do that if you don't really have to, but you need to put a little bit in there to combat what'll be called basically BER, or blossom end rot. So that lime is going to feed that calcium, also going to help with the fact of hopefully keeping your tomatoes from like splitting if you get too much rain, which another thing too can also cause the blossom end rot, besides the fact of infrequent watering. I always tell people, once you start watering your tomatoes, if you water them on a Monday and then you decide you're going to water them on a Wednesday and water them again on a Friday, you need to stick with your schedule. The only time that I kind of go against that schedule is if we've had like a real good rain, because too, that's another way of setting up blossom end rot is with infrequent watering. Whereas you water on Monday, then you don't think about watering them again to Thursday, Friday, or somewhere in there. You then can make your plants become stressed, and they will then too develop blossom end rot. So the thing is, definitely with tomatoes and peppers, you want to keep them on a good watering schedule. Now, I do admit, like sometimes when it gets to the weekend, I might water them on that Saturday. No, I'm not going to go back out on Sunday and water unless it is extremely hot. And then I will take and may give them a little bit of water. But usually, if I water them on Saturday, I have, unfortunately not gotten back out to water to maybe like that Tuesday or whatever, and to actually get it done. But with my years of experience so far, it's been pretty good of not necessarily setting up the blossom end rot. But the main thing is, just with that little bit of fertilizer, which you want to put it in your hole when you're planting, but you don't want to set your plants directly on it. What you do is put a little fertilizer in that hole. You want to turn around and mix it up with some of the native dirt. Water. I always like to put water in my hole, which I got that from my great grandmother, who always had a beautiful garden. She would put the fertilizer in, put water in that hole, mix it all up, then put her plants in, then go from there. And then, of course, put your dirt in, and you still need to water in your plants after the fact that you have planted them. So we're going to get back to actually finishing up the rest of these tomatoes. We're also going to be planting out our corn that we're growing here at the house, and putting our okra and In the center that I'm standing in currently, this is where we're going to put our squash. We're going to put about 7 squash plants in there. And yes, I know somebody's probably like, oh my God, you're going to cram everything in there. Well, even though I do have out the weed fabric, we do have some little gappage because we've been learning about how to use it this year. It will be okay. We're doing kind of like a reversal of the Three Sisters. Whereas when you do a Three Sisters garden, you got the corn, the squash, and the beans. What we're doing is we're going to put the squash in between one of our rows of tomatoes right here, which is this row right here. And so we left enough space for it because, too, the more that we can shade out any gaps that is even in this weed fabric, the better, because then it's also going to keep the weeds from coming through and everything. We will probably have to do a few weeds where we have burnt the holes at, because once you, of course, expose the ground to sun and water, what happens, you can eventually get weeds, but that'll be like very minimal weeding. Trust me, you all, this is some of the best stuff I have seen. Only place that you see grass is where my weed fabric is not touching it or covering it. So that is always on the outer skirts of all of that. But other than that, that is